this may be the single most important guest at the summit. Attorney Michael Gatchalian is one of our great heroes, being a survivor who had the courage to step up more than 20 years ago. And here he is, an attorney, still standing, and he's here at the summit. And it is with great honor and humility that I welcome Michael Gatchalian to
Thank you, Murray. Good afternoon. Please indulge me before I start my testimony. It's basically my experience, a narration of, chopped up narration of my experience when I filed a case against Father Apolinario Minorada. He was an Augustinian priest assigned at the Basilica de Santo Niño. While he is an Augustinian, the Santo Niño has a rather unique, distinct place. It's not a parish under the Archdiocese. It's a chapel. It's not under the hierarchy of the Archdiocese, but they, in the Archdiocese of Cebu. But it's still being headed by the Archbishop. But they report to a different superior, the superior of their order, the Order of St. Augustine. Please bear with me as I show you a few minutes of the clips of the documentary made by Drew Ambrose of Al Jazeera. Drew Ambrose is a multi-awarded Australian investigative journalist. He contacted me because he has read my story in Aris Rufus' book, This is the Black Book Sister that you said to 30 Wave. I think my story was in chapter 2. So he got my name there, he Googled me, and he contacted me and asked me if it'd be okay if we'd make a documentary about my story. I have a few friends, also altar boys, some of them also victims, but this one, a very loyal friend. He used to be my legal staff in my law office, my solo practice then. And he said, you better do a tell-all once and for all, so you will not get used to saying your story over and over again, and people might accuse you of making up stories as you go along because it will change. So he gave me the courage to narrate. This is not even the full of what I suffered from my abuser, but I gave a condensed narration of what happened and what we did after. So please bear with me as I let you watch a few minutes of this clip before I continue.
Clerical abuse of children is not a new issue in the Philippines. Some victims have borne the scars for years.
Yeah, prayers, the cross. It was not the church that I read from my books in my Catholic high school. It was not the same church that I've heard from the priest's homilies. It was basically a mafia doing a concerted effort to drag me out.
At the age of 17, Michael Gatchalian served as an altar boy in Cebu's main basilica. He loved the responsibility and freedom of going to church without his parents. It was at the basilica where he and the other altar boys met the charismatic Father Apolinario Minorada.
He was very warm. In fact, he's one of the more sought after priests there. Not like the other priests who, if you meet them, it's like you just give their hand out for you to bless, but he would actually interact with most people. He would ask us out, go out to have dinner elsewhere, watch movies. He was really like a magnet.
One evening, after a busy Sunday Mass, Father Minorada took Michael and another altar boy to the movies. Inside the dark, empty cinema, Michael says the priest reached over and began fondling him.
That was the day I could never forget. I think it stunned me It stunned me to a point that I couldn't even really describe how I felt, but I vividly recall what happened. I could even remember that he whipped out a hanky with some weird smell on it and he wiped it on my face. It has a new smell of incense. You should take a shower. His hand was so heavy. I tried lifting it off his hands. I think out of surrender, I just pretended to fall asleep thinking that he might stop doing what he was doing at that time.
But instead of stopping, Michael says Father Mehrado began molesting the other altar boy.
He acted like he was not doing anything bad at us.
Around the same time, halfway across the world, allegations of clerical sexual abuse surfaced in the US, and the
This is on YouTube, by the way.
Yes.
Michael Gatchalian is one of the few victims of clergy abuse who tried to take on the Filipino Catholic Church. 2 years after being molested, Michael and 3 other altar boys who also said they were abused by Father Mehrado lodged a complaint with the church.
I still recall the phrase, you write a letter. That's it. The other priest, who was our former spiritual director, he said, we'll just pay them. We're going to get paid anyway. They was really insulted at that time. It was like their dog has bitten somebody and they're telling the victim, don't worry, we'll pay you anyway.
Like Imelda, the boys were given money, $9,000 to not press charges. They were told Father Mehrado would be rehabilitated and reassigned to a parish in Africa. But only a year later, Michael saw him wandering the grounds of Cebu's Basilica.
So I shouted at him, Father! And he looked at me, and when he recognized it as me, he just waved at me as if saying, hello, I was afraid that a lot of young kids would be exposed with him again. So that was the time I decided to take legal action.
Michael says the prosecutors initially supported his charges against Father Mehrado, but Mehrado tried to persuade the board.
Is among the many celebrating baptism. But this is no ordinary ceremony, because Gatchalian is a Catholic priest who took a vow of separation.
Boys, citing they were smoking and gambling, and the judge and prosecutor both reversed their decision.
The reviewing prosecutor said that my behavior, the way I acted, was not that of a child. That was his justification. So he decided to scrap the charges. He recommended that the charges against Father Mehrado be dismissed.
Do you feel dark forces were at play behind that decision?
Oh yes, there's no doubt about it. At that time, and even until now, what you have are the faces of the priests, but they're not the ones whose hands are playing the justice system. They have powerful friends. They have benefactors. They have people who want to be associated as being close to the church. So that's the scary part.
Just to begin with, the church assigned Father Ned D.
Let's continue that. This is the priest who investigated my complaint when I raised it to the Archdiocese. This is Father Benito Diso. I think he's also a canon lawyer and a civil lawyer. Let's see his reaction to how he disposed of my complaint before the Archdiocese.
To investigate Father Mehrado, he then defended the priest in court. Father Disu says the outcome was fair, despite the priest's admission of guilt.
First, In fairness to this guy, Father Milana, he admitted of the case, and he said, I am willing to go to jail for this.
So why didn't he go to jail?
Because the court threw in the garbage.
The case was thrown in the garbage.
Yes. Because it was clear that they were just after money. They had a deal already with him. We heard counseling.
But if he was a normal human being, he would probably be in jail.
Well, but that is the finding of the court, so be it. But the case was thrown in the garbage.
Father Jisoo has handled 5 other clerical sexual abuse cases in Cebu. Every case was either dismissed or settled out of court. In those cases, did you know the accused priest before you began the investigation?
Oh, yes.
So you knew all?
Oh, yes.
Would you say your relationship with them was close?
Oh, yes. They're friends. They're all friends, and they're priesthood.
When a friend is scrutinising the conduct of another friend, can they be impartial?
Oh, yes. I think so. Can you? Can you not? Our aim is not really to skill here that we find what is the truth and what would be the best for each individual. In my experience, it is better so behind those words.
Were the priests allowed to continue working?
Thank you.
It says it all.
This was after, when I filed the case before the Cebu City Prosecutor's Office. This made a big splash in 2002, June 2002. I was in the papers, front page all over for 45 days. So the Archdiocese was pressured into conducting its own investigation. And so I was told again, write another letter to the Cardinal. And I did. For a 20-year-old with no access to computer, I had to pay for it. Go to the internet shop, which was famous at that time, pay for a printer. And so I did. The church then offered me counseling, offered a Monsignor to conduct counseling. I only went as far as 2 sessions because this was not the kind of counseling. I haven't been to one before. I only have notions from what I see on TV, but I was not allowed to talk. It was like an indoctrination about forgiveness and the grace of forgiving somebody. I stopped after the 2nd session. I did not come back. And then they conducted this investigation. I went to Father Jesus' office. I narrated. I had with me then at that time a small book. I covered it with a pizza box from, so it won't get drenched in the rain. I wrote there all the important dates, when I was molested, what I did after, and all those things that I thought was significant. So I narrated it to Father Viso. I remember my statement amounted to 7 pages, and then he said, "Okay, we will finalize this. Come back here. Give me 3 days. Come back here, and then you will sign this, and we will submit this to the Archdiocese." I went back 3 days after. He said, "My printer's broken." But what I was able to print was the last page. I think this would not, we will not be able to fix this today, but if you don't want to come back and waste any more money for your fare, just sign this last page.
Oh,
I did.
oh no.
I did, and that's it. He said he submitted it to the Archdiocese for investigation. I never really heard what happened. I did not know what was the decision, but that was it. Let's go back. I'll give you a background of what I was growing up, because especially you, sisters, you will be working on this. This is the stereotype, this is the profile of what the predators consider as prey. My father is an SVD seminarian. My mother is a Boholana whose father died when she was 4 years old. So their family was forced to move to Mindanao my grandmother, my mother's mother, decided to assimilate herself with the Manobo tribe. She was able to marry 3 times more with Manobo tribesmen, so I have cousins who are Manobos. My father was assigned in Trento, Agusan del Sur, as an SVD seminarian. They met there because my mother was a church volunteer. So before my father was ordained, he was able to ask for a dispensation. They got married, and I was born. I was born in Nasipit, Agusan del Norte, but I grew up here in Cebu because at that time, EDSA and the waning years of the Marcos dictatorship caused so much violence in Mindanao. So I grew up here in Cebu. We were not rich. We grew up poor. Lower middle class even. We didn't have any TV until I went to college. I studied at the University of San Jose Recoletos. This is run by the Agustinian Recollects. I was recruited to become an altar boy because there was a Boy Scout program that required us to obtain 150 hours of church service. One of the Boy Scout leaders recommended, let's go to Santo Niño because I'm an altar boy at Santo Niño. Santo Niño is located in the downtown area. For a 15-year-old boy, going to the downtown unsupervised by the parents and all, that's something else. You expect bad things to happen. You expect this young, rebellious, restless boy to do not just church stuff. And that's what I did. I stopped the Boy Scout movement. I continued to be an altar boy. So I told my parents I'll be out at the Basilica Fridays and Sundays the whole day because I will be serving. I would just actually serve 2 or 3 masses and wait for the malls to open. And then I would spend my time at the mall. And then when the malls closed at 8 o'clock in the evening, I'd go home. And my mother would say, oh, you must be very tired. Church. And that was my life until I graduated high school. And that's my profile. I was known, even by the priest, as one of those kapasaway, badlungon. I got involved with the street children. My friends were the children of the Muslim vendors. We have nothing else to do. We steal, we run around the downtown area. We were basically the thugs in the downtown area. And that's under the priest's attention. But they still welcome me in the Basilica. This Father Mejorada founded actually our group, the Knights of Santo Niño. He founded this altar boy when he was assigned there in 1988. I was there already in 1995, so he went back. That was not a time for reassignment of the priest. He just appeared there. But what I heard later on was that he actually got in trouble with his parish assignment, and so he had to hide back to Cebu. But we did not know that at that time. And the older sacristan, remembering their heydays, like, oh, Father Jing, very galante, he would always bring us to discos, eat out and all. And that was our turn. So that's what we did with Father Mejorada, and that's how he was able to molest most of us. I have with me in my group, in my batch, 10 of us, and I think he molested 4 or 5. The rest he didn't like, not his type. The thing is, when I reported this, when I came out, all our kuyas, all the others, took Father Mejorada aside. They even blamed us. Like, isn't it too obvious for you that he was gay? Why did you go out with him? You were the ones who told us that that's what he likes. He likes to bring boys to discos, to movies and dinners. And they were like blaming us also. Even when I filed a case, this was all over the media, this group of our kuyas launched their own press conference defending Father Mejorada. And they said all the really, really nasty things about me, which actually were true. They even went as far as, oh, he likes designer jeans and all, that's why he's doing this, because he wants to make money from this. That all those things they said. So when the case was before the prosecutor, in the Philippines, when you file a criminal case, it has to pass through a preliminary screening from the prosecutor. The determination there is just a very, very low level of evidence whether there is probable cause to raise this before the courts. Now, the reviewing prosecutor, still my friend now, we play golf every once in a while. was a new lawyer at that time, very idealistic. He prominent, came from a prominent family. He said, and he related this to me years after, when I started law school and we go out together. That, did you know that the cardinal approached me, really approached me, sat beside me, and offered me so much money that I would have been able to buy the car that I was planning on buying at that time in cash. And this was after the fact. I already lost the case, and he was free like that. And then he said, I did not take the money. You should not be mad at me. I said, I understand. He said he felt so insulted by what this Archbishop did, that when he made the recommendation, in my case, he recommended for the filing of a case against the priest, RA 7610. So it's a special law protecting children. What happened was that, as per the procedure, a reviewing prosecutor will review his findings. Now his recommendation was just 2 pages recommending the filing. Very simple. Considering that the complainant is a child, as shown by his birth certificate at the time, and that there's an admission that the priest did this act, there is probable cause to charge him for violation of RA 7610. The reviewing prosecutor made like a 7 or 8 page report justifying why he could not support the filing of the case against the priest. In there, he lambasted me. He used the very law that I invoked to file the case against the priest. He said, yes, it is true, the United Nations Convention defines a child as anybody below 18 years of age, and that there's special protection given to them. Even simple acts of bringing him to the movie houses, to a pension house, would constitute a violation of this law. He did not mention that there was also a sexual act. He said, but considering the action of this complainant, we can see that he is very scheming, very calculating, and he in fact has no qualms about, I was so angry at that time when I give interviews. It's like, it's a no-holds-barred description of the priest, and also you could imagine 20 years old, no one's guiding me, and also anger could be very apparent when I speak. So that's what he said. He said, this is not the act of a child. This is not the act of a person that needs to be protected by this law. And so that's it. Because of this, I recommend that he should not be, the charges against Father Mayorada be dropped. And of course, that was what was adopted with the chief prosecutor. As an aside, when the chief prosecutor resigned, lo and behold, that reviewing prosecutor also was the one promoted as the chief prosecutor. There is this connection. I also found this connection in another case that's on the list, Father Iroho, I think. When this case came in the public, the prosecutor who recommended for his dismissal months later was promoted also to a bigger position. So I saw this pattern, these kinds of cases, when this was the Archbishop at that time. God rest his soul, but I'm not scared because I'm telling the truth. So this is what happened. From the dismissal from the prosecutor, I appealed to the DOJ. One sentence resolution, the DOJ said, I affirm everything, the recommendation of the chief prosecutor. So I raised this matter before the Court of Appeals, as was the procedure. By that time, I was already a lawyer. I became a lawyer for this case, like so arrogant, so all right, straight from Manila, let me do this. I lost really, really bad, lost terribly in the Court of Appeals. So I elevated the dismissal to the Supreme Court. Same thing. I lost really, really bad. In hindsight, during the lockdown, I withdrew all my files from my previous office because I transferred to a new one near the Cebu Business Park. Then I was able to take a look at those old files. It was this thick already. So I tried reading the pleadings I made. I cringed. That is why you should believe in the adage that you should not be a lawyer for yourself. Only a fool becomes a lawyer for yourself. My pleadings were filled with anger, personal attacks against the judge, or even fearless insinuation of bribery and undue influence, which if those things if the judge would really pick it up, would be grounds for my disbarment. I cringed, like, oh, next time I should not be lawyering for myself. I burned all those files out of cringe in 2021. But I think it serves something better. If I imagine if the case was filed and there would be a trial, the priest would probably be acquitted because they'll be able to go, and reach the judge. And that would be the end of it. And then that's it. But this time, because the last ball was my loss, it challenged me. So every time somebody would ask me about my case, I would not say no to an interview. So Aris Rufo of Rockler called me one time. And I was waiting. I was 3 hours ahead of my flight going back to Cebu from a very early hearing here in QC. So I gave him an interview. I did not know that it was for that book, The Altar of Secrets. So that's how it got picked up. That's how it gained traction. I would like to stress to you the difficulties I faced. I am 22 years old at that time. My older brother was a seminarian with Augustinians. My family, of course, my mother is a church worker. My father is a religious. They were torn. They cannot help me, and then without alienating my brother. My brother was the more promising at that time. Well, at that time I was already jailed twice for shoplifting. So as a parent, I'd rather invest on this sure bought here rather than this one, which I understood. So what I told them, it's okay that you would not help. It's okay that you would not support, but please just don't hold me back. And that's what they did. I would challenge anybody who would say your parents were bad. No, they were good. They were very patient to me. And I think if I was the parent of the 20-year-old Michael, I would have quit sooner. But they were very patient, so they respected that. So I could do anything I want. I lambasted the bishop, I lambasted the priest, all in public, all in newspaper, and they could not do anything about it because we already had an agreement. At this time when we filed the case, all of us in our group were told we're not allowed to step in the basilica anymore. Of course we were rebellious, of course we were still arrogant, like, we will go back. And when we went there, armed guards were already there with their shotguns. And so that was the time of, this is really serious. This is not some child's play anymore. That was the first time I fear factored in what I would do the next time. So we were all not allowed to step in the basilica. Most of us stopped going to church, except for one or two. My other friends, I remember them because I know until this time they're still in pain. They were not able, I'm even luckier. I have this outlet. I could say over and over again my experience, maybe fine-tuning it a bit with more recollections or whatever, but they don't. I think they won't be able to even confide with their wives about this, with their children. And I compared to myself, my wife is my law school classmate. She's currently a prosecutor also in Cebu City. At least she's open. Although I could see she would sometimes avoid the topic, but at least I could talk to her about, and even my children, these kids say the darndest things. What? You were molested? And things like that. But at least it's already in his consciousness. It's not something, because, as a boy, maybe if he's in high school and somebody else has read about me, and then if they get confronted, it's very embarrassing for them. So at least, that's how I see it. At least it's already in his consciousness, and as he grows up, I think he'll be able to filter more. And we all suffered. So aside from us not being allowed to enter the basilica, even during those times that I applied for a job, it was very difficult for me to find a job. Google was already almost around at that time. It's very easy to Google my name at that time, and then the search results would most certainly point out to all those cases. And when I did find a job, and this was when I started law school already, I worked as a supervisor in a gasoline station. And then later on, the owner asked me to have some documents notarized, and I told him, okay, I'll just have this notarized with my lawyer. He said, why do you have a lawyer? And then he asked, then I told him, and I thought it was a badge of honor, like, oh, this is what I did. The next day he called me, he said, you're fired, don't report here anymore. Those are the difficulties I experienced. When I started law school, I graduated 2022, so it took me 6 years in college because I wasted 2 years. I got kicked out after this incident with Father Mejorada, so I had to start all over again. When I expressed my intention to start law school, my father told me, you still have your 2 sisters that I need to study. It would not be fair if you'll use the family resources on you, and you already have your degree. So I hope you understand. And I completely said yes. So I went to in one of my commutes to this gasoline station, a former lay minister from the Basilica saw me in the jeep, and he struck a conversation. Oh, where are you now? What are your plans? And then I told him, I don't know, maybe I just had a fresh conversation with my dad. So I told him, I would want to go to law school, but my dad said the family could not afford it anymore. And he said, how much do you need? I really don't know the tuition at that time. And I said, I couldn't even, get the fee for the entrance exam. And he said, how much is it? I said, 2,000 pesos. And he said, he took 2,500 from his pocket, and he said, okay, take the exam tonight. And I said, what's this for? What if I pass the exam? And what's next? He said, don't worry about it. No, come back to me in the next month. This is my number. Come back to me in the next month. Let me know what you need. We'll find a way for it. That's what he did to me until I graduated in law school. Every month he gave me 2,500 pesos, which at that time was enough as to pay as tuition for law school. It was only in the 4th year when the university increased its fees. I told him, 2,500 is not enough, Brad. And he said, so sorry, I'll give you my ATM. You'll know how much there is. Take what's there. And every month, he apparently receives 3,000 pesos in pension. So every month, so it was still not enough. So in my 4th year, I had to ask, my dad went back to the SVDs in San Carlos, and I think it was Father Hines who subsequently became the superior of the SVDs worldwide, who said, okay, just show me your bill, I'm gonna sign it, and they're gonna honor it. And that's what tied me to law school. And after law school, it was bar review. We took the bar in 2007. I had my review here in UP, but I really could not afford to stay here for 6 months for my lodging, for my food, for the review. So I only enrolled, but I did not really attend. My girlfriend and her friends the rich. They had a review in Ateneo Law School in Makati. They had their separate apartment units, each girl with kitchen, 2 rooms. So I spent my 6 months rent-free by volunteering to cook for them. Cook for them until the bar exam was conducted in September. So I arrived, I lived with them 1 week here from this friend, another week here, and then I tied myself till September. Well, there in Makati, another classmate who actually was a former Agustinian also reported to me that, did you know that Father Migorada is assigned just there? The Agustinians used to have a parish there, Guadalupe Viejo Parish in Makati. They used to have it, but I've heard just last year that the Archdiocese of Manila took it from them. So Father Migorada was there. So he said, let's pay him a visit. Okay, let's go. Well, as most lawyers know, when you're taking the bar candidates are the most prayerful, very religious, very. If you could pray to as many gods as you can, you would. Even have a classmate who has a Buddha and a green Santo Niño and a fireman Santo Niño. That's how prayerful we were. So, okay, let's visit Father Migorada. He was really there. So I told him, we went and he was shocked. Like, oh, you're here. I told him, oh, we're just here to ask for your blessing because we're taking the bar. We had our pens blessed, our erasers, and the water bottles blessed. And that was it. After, when I passed the bar, oh, this is a very miraculous pass. The passing rate for the bar exam was 75. But even if you have 75, you should not have any grades from any of those subjects below 50. My average was 74.4. My grade in civil law was 40. That would have been 2 reasons for me not to be admitted in the bar. I don't know whose prayers were. The Supreme Court lowered the passing rate from 75 to 74. So but I still have a problem with my civil law. It was 40, really, really low. The Supreme Court made another ruling for that year alone to lower the passing rate of the civil law subject from 50 to 40. Became a lawyer. After we took our oath here, my girlfriend and I don't know, it was maybe out of sincerity, we decided let's visit Father Migorada again. So just the 2 of us, we went back there to Guadalupe Viejo and he was still there. And that was the time, and I can tell you this with straight eyes, that I reconciled with Father Migorada. I told him, this is what you did to me. That was 2008, so 10 years ago. This is what I am now. Please do not blame yourself. I made good of what I have despite the things that you did to me. This is my girlfriend. Hopefully we will build our own family. She's gonna be my wife. And just basically to assure him, I am a believer of second chances. Of course, I've been arrested twice, I've been in jail twice, and still I became a lawyer. So I'm a very, very big believer in second chances. I told him, please do good. Don't worry about me anymore. Don't carry our issues with you as you continue your ministry. And then he invited me to join him as he was set to say the mass for that afternoon. So I attended his mass, me and my girlfriend, and he was the one presiding. I really had no problem delineating. I could not see an abuser. I could not see a molester when I attended his mass. And I'm very grateful for that I am given that kind of, probably superpowers. I really have no problem with whoever is saying the mass. I could, what he did outside would not be an issue to me. But when we talk outside, I talk to them as if they're any other individual or adversary in court. You know, I say what's in my mind. I don't hold back. When they're in the mass, it's something else. So that was the last I heard of Father Mejorada. Then came this Aris Rufo launched his book. Oh, I still had to, I had contacted him. I said there are factual errors there. I did not win in the Supreme Court, or I did not win in the Court of Appeals. I lost all. You should correct that. He did not reply anymore, and the next thing I heard, he died. So I said, oh, yeah, but at least you know that I lost all the way. I did not win anything. When the documentary was made by Al Jazeera in 2017, I was already married at that time. My first son was already 1 year old at that time. And that was the time that I heard that Father Mejorada continued with his ministry. And he continues to be exposed with children. In fact, if you see the documentary, he was filmed with a baby on his lap, as he was assigned in Nueva Ecija. And nothing happened. 2017, 2018, 2019, nothing happened. Father Mejorada continued with his ministry after that. And what I heard was that Father Mejorada has already been life-sized. Yeah. And this is what I only have is anecdotal, but I confirmed this from the superior of the Augustinians himself, that he's already life-sized. But what actually happened was that somebody from the Vatican, during the lockdowns, not allowed to go outside, probably got bored. He was watching documentaries, and he saw this documentary. So imagine that 3-4 years has lapsed and nothing has been done. And when he saw this documentary, he called the Augustinians. He said, "What have you done about this? What actions have you taken about this?" And that was the only time that they decided to expel Father Mejorada and take out his faculties to say Mass. That was the only time. So no amount of court case, no amount of complaint from the church authorities, from the archdiocese where the incident happened, no amount of bad mouthing from the press prompted them to do something about it. It was only a call, I don't know from whom, from the Vatican, that made them move. And this was more than 20 years since I filed the case. You could only imagine. And this was from Michael Gatchalian, the rebellious, brave lawyer who could fight his own battle, who had the means now, although not before, to fight this kind of battle. But then imagine this kind of difficulty from 15-year-old, 16-year-old, and whose family would probably tell them, "Stop it, you're embarrassing the whole family." And whose teacher would probably tell him, "What are you doing here? What are you doing to the priest?" So please put that in mind when we end this summit, when we go to our ways, we do our respective jobs, we continue with our respective missions. Please put that in mind, that these are the difficulties facing the abused, facing the victims. Please put that in mind when you do your archiving database, when you do your counseling and your assistance to the victims, when we do our prosecution, when we do our defending of whoever is accused. Please put that in mind. Thank you.
Hard to follow that. Before we open to an open forum, I believe Leanne wants to say something on behalf of the group.
Thank you, Marie. So I do have some people to thank also for our participation in this event. But before that, I'd like to address something, an interesting point that I was sensitive to during Michael's brave telling of the story. In Eastern culture, Asian culture, we have an attitude of permissiveness. We're willing to turn a blind eye, whether it's corruption in the family or outside. So when he mentioned that he went to see Father Mejorada to speak words of forgiveness, that's a very Filipino and humane thing to do, yes. But I know our friends with a Western philosophy of zero tolerance. I don't know what was going on in your minds at the time. I don't know if you wanted to put up a fight. But it's a very important distinction to make, that there's this gradual, I would like to say an ongoing discernment on the tension between justice and mercy. Because justice without mercy, or mercy without justice, they're both just incomplete, one without the other. And in my own journey of asking myself a few years ago, where am I in this fight? Zero tolerance, in other words, full justice. And literally a small slip fell out of the Bible I was reading. It said justice precedes mercy. It didn't say it goes without it. And a priest friend helped me further understand that. He said, you know, sometimes maybe what it takes is for a perpetrator to be put to justice, for him to be sorry, or for him to reform. So a body only changes when it's in pain. So without the pain of justice, there might not be true reform. In fact, we have a center here where they put priests or religious in crises, who may be perpetrators or not, for their own good, but some are not willing to welcome that help. That's already cutting them slack. Instead of going to the prison where you have to take shifts lying down, you're sent to a nice little place near the water, you know, to rest, and you're still not accepting that. Some people just won't accept it, you know. I just wanted to bring that element of cultural perspective on zero tolerance. We're not all there. So a friend of ours, a priest friend, asked us to say, what's next? What's after this summit? So the team can say their own perspectives later, but just some very practical little next steps. We would like to devise a communication plan for victims in the country to be made aware of where they can go. And we would like to highlight the big center at Vicente Soto, at least for those who are based in Cebu at the time. I think that will be the scope of coverage at this point. We don't have the capacity to deal with more than that. But we'll start there. We're assisting with, I know particularly the invitation for our talk this afternoon was on victim care, and we haven't zeroed in on that. By the design of Providence, we have 3 lawyers on board, so we've mainly provided legal assistance to 3 victims. And 2 of the accused priests, through negotiations with our team and theirs, entered into plea bargain. They admitted guilt in court, 2 of them. And so just on January 19th, the Feast of the Child Jesus, around the time we finished our letter, so decided to send it on that day, we asked the Archbishop of Cebu about the status of the 3 priests with their respective case numbers and where they are now. They promised to give us an answer by this Monday, thanks to our friends from the database for putting that kind of pressure on them. They would have ignored us if this didn't explode on January 29th in the news, you know? Okay, so that's the first thing. We want victims and victim survivors, thrivers, sorry, you know, we want them to know where to go. And the first step is screening, psychological, physical, all of that at the Pink Center, that's, you know. And then, after that, they'll refer them to us, and we'll see what we can do. So, let me see. So I'd like to thank Michael, of course, for stepping up earlier and doing that brave talk. And of course, Geno, Naomi, and Lisa, the 4. We all have our respective, specific, irreplaceable roles within the organization. We're also different from each other. It's a miracle we're still together. You should see our fights. Clearly, it's the Lord's work and we stay together in spite of all our disagreements, huh? And profound differences in culture and backgrounds. So I'd like to thank the team for sticking it out and just, yeah. And then, of course, then to Sister Leah or Sister Sky, for bringing all the 3 religious sisters here today and for all your respective advocacies in safeguarding. And our friends from the Diocese of Caloocan, under Bishop Ambo David somehow, or Cardinal David now, right? So thank you for being with us. Jocelyn from Lara Vicuña Foundation, Shelter for Abused Women. Yella of Consuelo Zobel Foundation for Children's Rights. Yeah, so it would have been very heavy to be here, just the 5 of us. So we're actually really grateful to have other lay and religious representing the church. So we feel the burdens a bit spread out. The responsibility to remind us we're not alone. So, of course, we want to thank ECA for organizing this great summit that allows us all to get together and join forces to help make the church a safe place for children. Thank you, Marie, Annalyn, and the whole team behind the scenes. So it has really been a great gift to discover the different participants in this summit. So we've made the acknowledgements of our friends, and I guess that's it. Attorney Ison Garcia and his spouse, guests of Jenna. Okay, so that wraps up the little message. I hope I didn't take too much of your time.
Murray, can I just say something?
Yeah, yes, just a moment. Yeah.
Oh, sure.
So thank you very much, and it was very generous of you. Before we open the open session to more conversations, a couple of comments, because we want to address what Michael has said. I believe that Anne would like to make a comment, and also Kieran Taps would like to make a comment as well. So with your forbearance.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
I want to recall I am brought to tears by your story. I am so glad that you were a rebel and had the power of anger, because I think it serves as you are from afar, from thousands of miles away in the U.S. When Susie and I first looked at the Philippine abuse problem in 2015, you were like this sole voice in the wilderness, and you still are. I mean, you're the only name in any of the coverage. And you're a beacon. You're a beacon to all the other victims. I think there are thousands of victims here in the Philippines. We have every reason, based upon data from other countries, to assume that. Thousands of people suffering. And this is presumptuous because I have not been traumatized as by sexual abuse. But as far as the really fascinating point that you raised, Leanne, about the cultural difference, the Asian approach of forgiveness and the Western approach, like, let's go get them. I think what Michael did with Father Meharada was so beautiful and liberating for you, you told us the other day. At the same time, you also were clearly disturbed that he was still in ministry in 2017, 2018, 2019. Susie manages our database of accused U.S. clergy. We've been doing it since 2000. Well, Bishop Accountability started in 2003, but I think we put the database online. Yeah, we started it in 2003, I guess. We have close to 8,000 names of publicly accused U.S. clergy. And Susie knows this better than I do. We have victims calling us and emailing us, trying to get their names on the list, the names of their perpetrators. And we have had victims say to us, I was going to kill myself, and then I Googled his name again, and up it popped on the database. I cannot tell you You know, this is not naming and shaming. Let's forget a moment about the priest side of things, because they get so well represented. They are men. They are men supported by powerful bishops. These victims have nothing. And so when their perpetrator gets named, when they've been cheated by the legal system, cheated by the culture, cheated by the power of the church, and this dumb little NGO in the US is putting their priest's name on a list very responsibly, based on credible public sources, it can save their lives. So if you are speaking to victims who want their perpetrators' names on the list, it's a difficult step, because the name has to be in the public domain. We can't just, as much as we might believe them, we can't just add the name to the list. There has to be a news article, there has to be a court document, there has to be a church admission. But we have, seen hundreds, if not thousands of victims take that step towards getting, outing their abuser in order to get him on our list. And they are saving the lives of other victims and preventing molestation of other children when they list the names. There are two ways to protect kids if you care about protecting kids. You can jail the child molester, but if that's impossible, then you can get his name in the public domain. So that when that parent is sending that child to religious education class and just Googles, oh, who's this new priest? Up pops his name. No thanks, I'm not putting my kid near that guy. So I know it seems like a brutal thing, perhaps, to certain perspectives, to name them. But you either take the side of the abuser or you take the side of the victim. And you can have compassion for the abuser. There, but for the grace of God, go any of us, right? If we were traumatized, if we were skewed in a certain way. But you have to save the more helpless person, and that's the kid.
Thank you very much, Amy.
And it's from personal experience about your two friends, for example, who really didn't want to know about it or didn't want to get involved. When I was 9, I went to a De La Salle school, and I had a brother who was a dreadful teacher. He was from Ireland. But nevertheless, he insisted that when we did our homework and brought our homework up, we had to stand next to his desk where the other kids couldn't see anything. And when I brought my homework up, he'd start rubbing my thigh like this. Now, I hated it. And I would just push it away and keep 2 meters away. And then there's nothing much I could do about it. He was doing it to everyone. And I came home from school one day and I had the usual question, how was school today? And I said, it was okay, but I'm sick of this brother rubbing my leg. Now, when you're 9, sometimes you say things and you don't really understand the significance of it. All I can distinctly remember is that the atmosphere at the dinner table was a bit electric. Now what happened was, it stopped. Now I don't know whether it was my parents who said something or someone else did, but in any event it stopped. Now one of the reasons why and I was very relieved actually. Now I wasn't abused, I've never been abused, unfortunately. But one of the reasons why I continue to remember this incident was I became a lawyer after I left the seminary, and I started doing cases in court, and I'd be sitting up the back of a case and listening to another case which was before me, and quite often, I wasn't doing sexual abuse cases, quite often it was a rape case involving some poor girl. And in those days, it's all quite different now, but in those days, this poor girl would be up there in the witness box being harangued by barristers, going through her sexual experience, how often she'd had sex with boys and all this sort of thing, in order to prove consent or something like that. And it was just dreadful. And I remember sitting here thinking, thank God, back when I was 9, nothing happened, and I wasn't interviewed by two burly policemen, and they would have been policemen, and they would have had their guns inside their coats. And in a very closed Catholic community, if word got around that I had sent this brother to jail, that would have been incredibly traumatic. It would have been far traumatic. And if I can't say I was abused, but it was far traumatic than having my leg rubbed. So I think we have to understand the problems and also understand what's happened since. Now that cross-examination of those girls would never take place like that now. It would all be done, with cameras and things, and they didn't have to sit in the same room as the perpetrator, face to face. So there's lots of things improved, and also people are properly trained to these days. And I'm talking about Australia, of course, I'm not talking about here. But I can understand in the cultures that have been described here why some people, by the way, it's not just here, the research in Australia suggests that only 7% of women will actually go to the police about sexual abuse. 7%. Now, and I think one of the reasons is because the difficulties of the legal system in actually handling all that. But anyway, thank you very much for what you said. It was really, really amazing. I just wish I had the same courage. It's much easier to talk about canon law than to be talking about the sort of things that you do. Thank you.
All right, so we're now, this is the open forum. And anyone that would like to ask questions of Michael, please come up. I want to ask you a question, Michael. What did you manage to steal with the boys? What were you getting? Was it designer jeans?
Archie comic books.
Oh, Archie comic books.
I had to complete it.
And how did they catch you? Weren't you smart enough or quick enough? What happened? The cops caught you, right?
I was missing only one volume. And I think they put a sting on me. They put this one last missing volume. I had to come back there with the 19 others. It's still in my bag. So when they caught me with 20.
Oh no! Alright. Better luck next time, Michael. Don't go for Archie, go for something else. Alright, so open forum. Anyone like to make a comment to Michael or question of Michael or anything, any interaction?
I'm thinking about your story of forgiving the priest, and that's not unheard of in the States. We have heard stories of survivors who get to a point where they need to do that, for their own healing. But one thing we've learned too is that the notion of forgiveness should not be imposed on a survivor. It's entirely up to them.
I'm sharing it, and I always highlight it when I do this kind of talk. And I'm sharing this, and I do this. I highlight it as often as I can when I do this talk, because I describe myself as rebellious and angry and belligerent and all. But when I did that, it was very liberating for the soul. It lessened my hate to the church. I actually had the courage to regularly go to Mass after that, even after taking the bar exam. So, I'm not even recommending it for everybody, but I'm saying it to you to assure you that when I did that, it did something good to me. And it probably did something good also in my relationship relationship with my wife. When this thing with Father Morada came out, it was with a different girlfriend then. But when she heard about it, we had a really, really big fight. She was so embarrassed. She was so. We did not break up, but the thing is, it's like she castigated me more, like I was the abuser. I do not blame her, but that's a factual narration of her reaction. I think it was sort of a defense mechanism for me, because I don't want my girlfriend to break up with me. If she'd learn about this, I had to, tell it to her ahead. That was probably what was in my mind. But the thing is, it did something good for me.
Right, and that's what we've heard too, of other survivors that made the same choice. And it's a very beautiful thing, So I'm happy for you.
Thank you.
Can I say, Michael, if you had any doubts about Jesus, they would have passed when you got a 40% pass. And when they dropped it to 70%, your faith was restored, right? Yes, I believe in Jesus too after that. Okay, so,
Yes, sir.
Hi, Michael. With what happened to you, I think it's all positive, no? You accepted it, and you turned into the negative feeling, the feeling of hatred, you turned it into a positive energy, which brought you up with what you have today. I just would like to ask, did you pray for your perpetrator during those healing period? Did you have the courage to pray for his conversion too?
It never crossed my mind. I was still hateful. I still am now. But at least I have so many good things to talk about. It didn't come to mind. What I remember praying was, and this is what it's like my mantra, Lord, give me the strength to do your will. I realize it's not good to just dictate what outcome you want. And it would be better if whatever outcome it is, you would be given a very accepting disposition. That's what has been my mantra since I took the bar and until now.
Yes, actually that happens also to a lot of people. Whenever they pray, they always demand for what they want. But if our God will not be giving it to them on that day, as they grow older, the prayers also reverse or also changes. No, you come up submitting to the will of what will happen, and you just let it happen, but with the guidance that He will always be with you in every situation along the way. Did you happen to be more prayerful after the healing with your perpetrator, or in order for you to guide your family, more especially your growing member of the family?
I was actually forced to be more prayerful.
That's right.
Because they would not let me in the church anymore. And I would be embarrassed to go to any other church. I think for 4 or 5 years I just stayed outside. And this friend of mine, fellow altar boy, he's very happy. He's back in the Basilica right now. He's one of the assistant sacristan mayors. That's his obsession, I think. But when we were in college, he said, we have our chapel in the university, we're looking for altar boys, let's go there. And that was the time I went back to regularly attending classes. Yeah. I'm very grateful to this guy. It's not, maybe not it's in his mind, but it's his obsession, like to, serve in the church and all. And he brings me along with him. That's how close we are. One last thing, make no mistake about it, I'm probably telling you some sort of fairy tale Cinderella story about this, but actually I missed this. Our role with CIST is to make sure, at least in the Archdiocese of Cebu, I know their playbook already, they've thrown everything to me. And what is shocking is when we handled these 2 cases that Leanne mentioned, we're still using this kind of playbook. A principal would approach, another priest would approach the victims, the mayor would approach the victims, all saying the same thing, forgive the priest, move on. This is bad for you. You won't be able to get a boyfriend or marry anymore if you keep on doing this. All this same playbook. And this is how we started the backdoor talks, because when I realized that the lawyer they sent is someone I knew, was of the same batch as me, I asked my wife to get his contact details, and then my wife patched us through. I talked to him. I scolded him. Don't you ever do that to me. You do not know that I'm the one, or my group is the one protecting this victim. Don't you ever do that to me. I'm going to have you disbarred. I'm going to have you filed for obstruction of justice. And I think they already knew what I'm capable of doing. I did that to them when I was not yet a lawyer. And how much more that I have the means now. So I think they backed down and they started to reach out to us whatever moves the Archdiocese would want. So they asked us if could you relate to the victim, if it would be okay to have us enter into plea bargaining. And that's how we facilitated. This is the first, last year, it's a very big milestone for CIST and for the safeguarding movement in Cebu. To my recollection, that's the only conviction we have in Cebu, at least in the Archdiocese of Cebu. And we had 2. During my time at the previous disposition, this wouldn't even reach the prosecutor's office. I doubt if the police would even assist them in typing their complaint. I doubt. So this was a very, very big thing. Small steps. I think some of us would have wanted the priest to be convicted of the actual charge. That would have entailed them to be meted with the 12 years at least imprisonment. But I still have the fear that they're still using this kind of playbook. Even if we go to the whole trial, it's very easy for one single church official to approach the judge and, could you give this to me? Could you give me this favor? And that's it. In criminal cases in the Philippines, once you get acquitted, it's 99% dead. There's practically no other way to reverse the conviction. In all the 100+ years of judicial history, I could only point to less than 5 cases where the acquittal was reversed. And this was because there was very blatant corruption and there was a very blatant disregard to the procedure. But in 99% of these cases, you cannot reverse an acquittal. So that was our fear at that time. But we're slowly taking steps to make sure that the playbook they showed to me would not be played to the other victims. Although I pray, my bigger prayer is, I hope there will be no other victims. That's too much to ask maybe this time.
Thank you very much. Any other questions?
Actually, this is very heavy for me because I'm a social worker. I'm working with the sexually abused girls, so we have a shelter here in Quezon City. So I'm just really curious about what happened to the attorney. So I know the struggle is very severe. It's a very traumatic situation. So what happened to you after the sexual abuse incidents happened? Is there any intervention aside from the legal matters? So did you undergo some psychotherapy sessions in order for you to overcome the trauma?
I mentioned earlier, it took me 6 years to finish my college degree. When this incident with Father Mejorada happened, my original course was actually electronics technology. I studied this in CITE, Center for Industrial Technology and Enterprise. It's a little known school founded by the Opus Dei movement. In fact, Bishop Alvaro del Portillo was the one who broke ground for this school. I think he's a saint now or beatified. Yeah, he was the one who founded this. That was during our midterm exams. I was in the director's, not dean's list because it's a technical school. I was in the director's list. When he committed that act to me, the one shown in the movie, the next day for that was our midterms exam. I don't study for any exams, except during the bar review. All my life, in grade school until high school, I really don't study. I just go there, and then, but I pretty much made it. That was the thing, but I was very, very prepared, and I know I could have topped that exam at that time. So I took the exam, I failed, and eventually, I failed in all my subjects, and I was expelled in that very semester that he did it to me. And then, so I re-enrolled at the University of San Carlos, spent another 4.5 years to finish my college. No counseling, no therapy. In fact, when I had the urge to share in our religious education subjects, we had 4 religious education subjects at the University of San Carlos in the whole bachelor's degree program. One of my re-ed teacher who saw me one time with my head on the wall, nakatulala, yes, and then me not participating in the class, she even scolded me like, don't you dare act like you're someone special. Yeah. You're a nobody here. What happened to you is nothing to be, for you to ask for special considerations and all. And I was like, oh, I was just thinking of something else. So I even experienced those kinds of rejection from my teachers. But I just persisted. No psychological, emotional help. The best help I got was from my fellow altar boys. Those who were not even victimized, but they saw me, they knew that what happened, I'm not making things up. They were the ones who supported me. We had threats in our life. They would walk with me after school. We would be bringing some metal bars and whatever we have in our pockets all the time. They would walk with me going home. These are the people who supported me. I never got any support from anybody else, not from church institutions, not even from my school, not even from the different organizations from the Basilica. In fact, they were the first ones to harass us. They were the first ones who would call the guards, like, oh, they're here again. And then the guards would, 4 or 5 guards with shotguns, start running and chase us. We never received any of those kinds of support from anybody else.
Excellent question. So one more question. You still okay? Still standing?
Even more than one more.
All right.
My flight is still tomorrow. So.
Hi, sir. Good afternoon. First of all, thank you for your very inspiring story, sir. I got so really inspired, and I just have this question. If you will stand in front of those youth victims, what will be your message, given the fact that you experience forgiveness with all of your heart, and you have this courage to attend his mass? What will be your message to those victims, youth victims?
Thank you very much. That's very important, actually, and thank you for bringing that up. I missed that. I always emphasize, and I think my colleagues from CIST would have noticed when we talk to the victims, I would have the same like pep talk, just to prep them up with what's gonna happen. So I tell them about the things that invisible hands might do. And this is very dangerous because they will not know who is against them. Their aunt, their teacher, they will not know that these people are already against them. But this I always repeat, you don't have to be afraid if you're telling the truth. As long as you can look at them in the eye, we're good. As long as you don't feel embarrassed. If you're embarrassed, that's probably because you're not telling the truth. But if you are, and you know from your heart that you are, do not be afraid to look at them in the eye. Look at everybody in the eye and say, this is what happened. And I think that has worked with the 2 girls we've helped, and especially this current one, this boy I can see, I don't know what's the appropriate thing to term, but he has homosexual tendencies, this boy that we're helping. And he was so scared when we reached him that he was even crying. You saw me cry earlier. Oh, he was worse when we talked. It's like his lips would, you could, when he was narrating what happened to him. And I think that the next time we saw him, we had some kamustahan last December. I think he was already okay, but I give him the same pep talk. Look at them in the eye. Don't look down. If they're talking about this stuff, look at them in the eye. And I think so far it has worked with them. It has, I think, helped them. But I know that's not enough. So we try as much as possible to, this is very important. You sit with the victim. You stand with the victim. You walk with the victim. This is very important. When they have their court cases, sit beside them. It will matter a lot. It will matter. It mattered to our cases even when she had support from her family. It will matter more when she will have no one else. Just sit with her. I usually don't talk with them. I just sit beside them. It does two things. It encourages her. It gives her moral support. The other one actually was that it makes the lawyer from the church not do any stupid stuff. And I think that's what I've been doing so far. There was just this incident when I came in late and I did not know, I was sitting in front of the accused priest, and that was the time that the victim was asked to identify which one, which is the accused who did this to you, and she's pointed straight at me. And I realized the priest stood up at my back. Okay. Kidding aside, it matters a lot. If you have time, even if you might say this is difficult, it's really easy. Just walk with them, sit beside them. It will mean a lot to the victims.
And I'd like to add to that, the boy, the third case, he calls us his second family. First time I've ever heard that. Because we have the representatives, and of course they needed the victims first and introduce who they are, and then they sit in court and said, he told his social worker, they're like my second family. So they were really touched.
So, Michael, thank you so much.
Thank you.